Here with me, I have Alistair Cockburn, who is our afternoon keynote at Scrum Day 2025. I'm thrilled to have you join us. Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about you?
I've lived all over the world all my life. So my parents lived in Sri Lanka for a couple of years, in Bangladesh for a couple of years. They were English. They lived in Canada. They lived in the US. Then I went to Sweden as an exchange student, and then I went to Scotland for a university. And then I've lived in Switzerland and in Germany and in France and lots of other places. And the reason that colors what I do is because I'm always a foreigner in a country. But what that means is when I'm a consultant, here's the thing is all the countries work in their own funny way. So when I'm a consultant and I was asked to create a methodology and I go from company to company, the companies all work. They all have a culture that in some way works for them. And so that colors my view of what should advice be because I can't come in and say, you're doing it wrong, do it this way. That can't come from me because I'm a visitor in a company just as I'm a visitor in a culture. I can't go to France and say, you're doing it all wrong, do it. Yeah, I'm not going to change France. And I'm not going to change your company. And so always for me, the riddle has been how do we get some sort of what I'll call it a micro improvement. I'll talk about micro improvements in the talk a bit. But how do we like leave the culture intact? Because I'm not going to change it and yet get some sort of improvement. And so that now, if you look at all of my writing since forever, and the methodology I made in the late 90s called Crystal's a family of methodologies for different cultures and different sizes. It can't be one. You can't have one. And so that's something to know about me, and all of my advice is it's all dealing with leave things as intact as possible and look for things that can improve the situation in that culture. So I guess that's something. So you get some bio out of me out of that, but also it colors everything I do and say. And there's no black and white, and nothing's binary. Everything's on a gradient, and so you're always just shifting. So when you have a discussion, it's never you're right, I'm wrong, or do it this way, or don't do it this way. It's to what extent is that useful? When do you back off? When do you do more of this? When less of this? And that now again, if you're a visitor in a culture, allows a discussion to happen between people who think they've got opposite views, but then in fact, you find they aren't that far away on a gradient if you look at it. And then you can talk, well, why do you do that? And how much are you willing to move? And, like that dance. So that, again, you get the something about my bio and the philosophy and the advice.
Love it. Awesome. I love that idea of starting with where we're at and seeing how we can make it better. Really, that's really what it's all about. Let me ask you, how did you get, so you're a signer of the Agile Manifesto. How did you get roped into that?
There were, in fact, three different communities of conversation happening in the 90s. And I was in all three of those. We had the lightweight process people that like me and Ken Schwaber and Kent Beck and saying there's too much process, lighten it up. So that was one, that's the one people know about. But there was the patterns movement, and they read the works of Christopher Alexander and started writing patterns for software development. And for me, it was project management. And they had very interesting and different types of meetups and groups and things like that, and the different form of dialogue, a different form of behaving in a room, a different way of asking questions about ideas. And that started around 1993, 92, 93. I joined in 94. And that, guess what, had an overlap with the lightweight processes thing. And then the third one was a guy called John Hopkins, who in 1993, 4, 5, something like that, had a series of workshops at Snowbird in Salt Lake City. And I had just moved to Salt Lake, so I kind of gate crashed that. But Martin Fowler also gate crashed that. And Ward Cunningham was there, and Ivar Jakobsen was there, and Kent Beck was there, and Martin Fowler was there. And so guess what? These are the same people who are doing the patterns thing and the lightweight process thing. So the manifesto meeting, I actually set that up and organized and set up the structure, the macro structure. I copied those workshops from the 90s for that John Hopkins did because of the way we did the dialogue and set up the conversation, then went skiing and then came back again and then went to dinner and after dinner drinks and then repeated that the next day. So these three different communities were running conversations all through the 90s. So it was very natural for, guess who showed up in that meeting was me, Ward Cunningham, Kent Beck, Martin Fowler, et cetera. You go down the list of people. most of whom had been in all three conversations, but some had been in two of the three and some one of the three. So in that sense, it was a very natural group of people to get together for that meeting.
And who came up with the word agile?
Oh, well, we don't know and nobody wants to know. It was a brainstorming session. And this is the thing that was wonderful about that meeting is there were 17 people in the room and the conversation was so fluid that literally nobody knows who said what. I can tell you just a couple of things. Bob Martin actually called the meeting and he said, I think there's something in common between us, and I don't like the word lightweight process. And I think we should write a manifesto. So he said that, and then he sat down, and then like everybody goes, well, how do we build an agenda? And so somebody says, and if I tell the story, it's oh, somebody says, and some we have no idea. So somebody says, well, just write it on a card because in 2001, extreme programming was the dominant methodology, and they always were doing things on index cards, and they always carried index cards in their pockets. So, then someone pulls out an index card and starts writing on it, and six more people pull out index cards and start writing and throwing them in the middle of the floor. And then someone says, how do we make an agenda out of that? And someone says, I don't. Anybody who wants to make an agenda, make an agenda. And anybody who doesn't can take a coffee break. So I took a coffee break. I came back and this thing was on the wall. That was our agenda. So that's how it ran. And so one of the things on the agenda was, everybody tell their story. So we all did that. And that was cool, kind of cool. And then someone said, we need a word. So we did a brainstorming, and I happened to facilitate that section, so maybe I remember more of that. And we just filled up a flip chart with ideas, and then we talked about them and what do you like, what do you not like. We voted. We did 3 rounds of voting. At first, we voted down from like 30 names to top 5. And then we voted for the winner, but there was a tie between agile and adaptive. So it was actually, we had to have another discussion and a tiebreaker, and then agile came out on top. And the cool thing is, it doesn't even matter who proposed it in the brainstorming because we sifted so hard. And thankfully, nobody's laid claim to who came up with the this over that format, who came up with the word agile, who, and it doesn't matter because it's very important for us that it's 17 people wordsmith that thing to death. So it didn't matter where it started, but where it ended was 100% unanimous.
Well, it is
Okay.
amazing how it's still relevant this time later. And I find the values and the principles more and more relevant the longer I practice. So I think it's a wonderful testament to that.
Yeah, and it's cool as I think about it and I read a lot. There's only been really 2 times in history that people got together and said, what is software about? And one was the 1968 NATO Conference on Software Engineering, and they recorded that. You can read everything that everybody said. So I encourage people to go find it and read it. But we didn't have a sense of history. We didn't record. We just had a discussion. And we went after values. That's what stands the test of time. We said, we think we operate from a particular place that other people don't operate from. Other people are looking at processes and tools and contracts and documentations and plans. And that's all very nice, but that's not where the magic is. The magic is in the people, the way they interact, the feedback from the customer, the feedback from the code, and paying attention to current reality. That's where the magic happens. And that's a value statement. And so, because we locked on values, those can stand time. And then the principles weren't bad. I don't 100% agree with all of them, but with 17 people and people getting on the airplane and you go down at 17, 12 of those things or something, it's hard to get 100% agreement there, but we got 100% agreement on the values.
That's fantastic. I love it. So you're speaking at Scrum Day Madison 2025. I'm thrilled to have you join us. Can you tell us a little bit about your keynote speech?
Yep, I'm calling a return to the heart of Agile because in 2014, I was going around the world giving talks and I said, Agile's just become too complicated. It's not supposed to be this way. And I didn't have a counter proposition at the time, but I had colleagues who had a 30-page glossary that they would inflict on their clients before they would work with the clients. And they would do a 1-day boot camp on what is Agile and teach them all the vocabulary. And I go, it's not supposed to be that way. And then I was challenged by a friend. He said, you got to fix this, do something. He said, you You need a name, you need a logo, and you need a certification scheme, right? There's a table stakes, get back on it. So at the next time I was teaching an advanced class and I just put up the four words. I said, well, what is it? What is there that's important? I said, well, collaboration is always important. That's like number one for me. And delivery is where you get feedback and value. So you got to have those two. And then I had a third one, which I live off of, which is reflective improvement. And then I realized that, and that's similar to Scrum, Inspect, and Adapt. And I realized that that's too many syllables. Nobody can say it. And it's two concepts, and everybody does a bad job on it. So I separated those into reflect and improve. And it turns out to be useful because, first I go, oh, what is there in reflect? And I realized, oh, it means stop, pause for a minute, breathe, stop working on the product, breathe, and think about where you want to go. How's your team doing? How's the product? Look at your emotions, check everybody in, right? Check the data, all that stuff. Then you can decide what to do. So having a moment of pause called out explicitly is actually a useful thing. So the heart of Agile, and it's funny, I have a cute little button here that we made up. Collaborate, deliver, reflect, and improve. That's all there is. There's no methodology attached. As collaboration gets better, things go better. As collaboration goes worse, things go worse. It's so obvious. It's as obvious as the nose on your face, and yet people don't put money and energy behind it. So what I try to do is they get people say, where's your budget for increasing collaboration? If it's important, you should have a budget line item called increasing trust, increasing collaboration. There should be a budget line item for that, whether it's parties or airplane flights or something. Where's that? Then you've got to deliver, and you deliver to find out where you're wrong, because you're always wrong somewhere. So early delivery to get information, but also early delivery gives you early value. So you win on both sides and you get the feedback. So collaborate to deliver and then reflect to improve. So collaborate to deliver, reflect to improve. And I don't need more than that. And then this now, if you look at the methodologies, whether it's SAFe or XP or Scrum or DSDM or whatever thing you choose, they give you the process parts, the structure, but they don't tell you how to fill the air. And the heart of Agile, the part I'm talking about, the heart of Agile is how do you fill the space between the people? What does collaboration look like? Where's your delivery and your feedback? What does it feel like when you pause and you reflect? Where are you going to go improve? Those are all the human parts. Then you can apply that to any process, pretty much any process. Now, if you're doing the hard waterfall process, you're not going to change the delivery part, but you can still do the collaborate, the reflect, and the improve, right? So you can do 3 out of the 4. But hopefully people are doing incremental development and incremental delivery these days. So I'm going to go into that in more detail, but the punchline is I just have these 4 words, and it's really, in a sense, I've scraped off all the decoration and I've only left the hard part. And the hard part is people actually talking to each other.
That is so true. Yeah, that is absolutely true.
So it's easy because there are no rules just to prove collaboration, but it's hard because guess what? You have to get people to like relax and talk.
That resonates with me so much because I've seen a lot of times where maybe consultants might come in and come up with these big processes, and the processes are intended to help people collaborate, but they don't, right?
Right.
All they are is these phase gates, really is what they are, put on top of an agile process. And it doesn't achieve the end that they're desiring or their stated desire. It doesn't achieve anything but make collaboration worse. And so to
Yeah.
me, we need to take all that away and get down
That-
to the basics.
That's why I call it the heart of Agile. Collaborate to deliver, reflect to improve. And that's what Agile is, really. In some places, Agile has become an overused word. I say increasing the effectiveness of teams, because this is actually wider than Agile. This is really about team effectiveness in a larger scale, because as you improve collaboration, you improve the quality of the team, you deliver, actually you get feedback on that, then you pause. And so whether you're using an Agile, specifically Agile process or not, it literally is a team effectiveness kind of a mantra. We don't call it a process. We look for words to make it not a process, because everybody thinks everything's a process. And so my colleague, Sole Pinter, an Argentinian lady who now living in Brussels, came up with a metaphor of a compass. Because everybody, you say words and people immediately think, oh, it's a process. And she says, well, how do we get away from anybody even thinking it's a process? She says, well, it's a compass. And you don't go north, south, east, west in a circle, right? You think about where you want to go. You look at the compass, and the compass helps you decide in which direction to advance. So these four words, like a compass, help you. You look at them and you say, in which direction would like to advance our conversations? Do we want to put energy on our collaboration conversations now? Or do we want to put our energies on the delivery conversations now? Right? Or is it time to pause and reflect, or which of these? So you choose one at a time. And because of the compass metaphor, we finally get away from thinking of four words as a process.
I love that metaphor. I love that a lot. I'm looking forward to seeing you at Scrum Day this year, October 16th, 2025. Get your tickets at www.scrumday.org.
And I'll see you there.